ant is, right?
Yeah.
You may not understand what that symbol is and feel, but it's trying to communicate with you. So it's communicating with you on the right brain level, except for the problem is that because your left brain and right brain don't connect and they're not really working, you don't really know exactly what is trying to be conveyed from the ant.
And it's
Right.
one
So
lone
it's
ant.
with left brain or right brain is all about symbol.
Yeah.
Things that don't have language, don't usually have sound, don't usually even have light sometimes. Sometimes the right brain does the best activity. And, we're shut down. So when I went back to school for this technique that I do that reboots the whole brain function, and I originally, it's old art that I believe actually came from Korea a long time ago, but the people in the US decided to change the name, back in the 20s into something else and make it, their family's work or whatever. So, but anyway, one of the things I found out was like the right brain has the best activity usually in the dark, where there's no sound and there's no light. And that's a really uncomfortable place for us to be, because, if we're in a place with complete darkness and our left hemisphere picks that up kind of as a cough. There's a lot of shamanism practice that some people will take you through. And one of them,
that's my favorite, most relaxing time of the night is when there's nothing on at all, and it's just completely quiet. Sorry, I'm on a farm and there's farm trucks going past. I apologize.
Yeah. So
that to me is my ultimate relaxation.
Yeah, me too. I thrive in pitch dark.
My husband can't stand it.
No, yeah, a lot of the people freak out. Like, I don't have the lights on and I'm clean and stuff. People are like, "Oh my God, there's no light on." It's like, I don't really need light. It's like a toning down. The left hemisphere loves drama. It loves sound, light. It loves the drama. It loves the trauma, of the world that's going on around it, because it silences kind of like the right hemisphere. And it's stuff that we've been trained to do. So when I went back to school, during that time period, they had just done a new study, not my school, but stress. And some of the colleges had gotten together and did a study on lateralization when we become left hemisphere lateralized in this world. And so up until like the 50s, usually it was around age 21 that we started moving into, the lateralization period. And 10 years ago, when I was going to this, children were bilateralized in the UK, Canada, and the US by age 5 because of the programming and the schooling and all this other stuff. So literally left hemisphere. So you have two brains. See, they even lie to you in medicine. They say you have a brain. You don't have a brain, because, if you go and look at that video from the researcher that I told you about, Stroke of Insight, she shows you a brain, and then it just flops open. The only thing that connects the brains together is on the backside, which is the umbilical, right? Where and
it's not only that, though. Both hemispheres of the brain touch, or something touches the hemisphere of brain, it can cause seizures.
Right.
Like,
so the thing is like,
when
there's
your
nothing that
pituitary
connects
gland that grows, if by chance that it starts rubbing against any of the hemispheres, you can start having seizures. If by chance you hit your head and they float, you know what I'm saying? It causes a seizure. If you have a swelling in the brain and it touches another part, it can cause a seizure. Can it not?
Yeah. Well, this is what happens, is that there is electrical charges that are sent from one hemisphere to the other, and one part of the brain, like the left part of the brain, just becomes stronger at sending signals. Kind of learns not to act back to the right hemisphere. So a lot of what is wrong with us is that the signals and the charges through the electrical charges no longer get passed back and forth between the brains. So we're no longer alpha. We can't actually achieve humanness, which is left brain and right brain working together, which is the brain working with the body. And what it does is it starts to actually, once you don't have the right hemisphere working at all, and it's not really, the charges are not really going back and forth, bridging both sides of the brain, then you start to have some really serious physical problems. So your right hemisphere deals with the left side of your body. Your left hemisphere deals with the right side of your body. And you can see it in people. You can see it in yourself. You got one eye that's bigger than the other. You got one eye that's lower than the other. You have a shoulder that's higher than the other. You have one buttocks that's larger than the other. You've got one leg that's stronger than the other. You've got one leg that's shorter than the other. That's left hemisphere lateralization. And it shows through your whole system. So say you don't have your right hemisphere is not working because you've been put through the reptilian, programming. Well, then everything on your right side is going to, say your left hemisphere is predominantly working. Well, then a lot of the stuff on the right side is probably going to work a lot better in all the organs because it still has a relationship to the brain and the brain is paying attention to it. And say your right hemisphere is off. Your right hemisphere deals with your heart. Why do so many people have heart? Why are so many people dying of heart problems? Because the right brain isn't working to regenerate the heart anymore. Because it's shut off.
I've got one more question that keeps popping up in my head, and it's popped up like 4 times. What is your input on what people are talking about as the stomach as actually another brain? Just wanted to throw that out there because I was wondering.
Yeah,
what
it's
your
not your
input is.
stomach, right? It's call your colon second brain.
I'm
Your
sorry.
gut.
I didn't catch all of that. I mic'd off so I could listen to you.
Yeah, so it's your colon that is your second. That's why if you don't have enough microbial mass in your colon, you're not getting enough data and information that helps the body work. So it's through microbial mass and the microbials working in the colon that actually creates a whole lot of information, data that you're putting in. So all the food and everything.
Sort of like the data, like what your body really needs to
but
basically
nutrition is
combat
data.
Certain things. Exactly.
Nutrition is data. And
Right.
if you're not eating proper nutrition, then colon isn't picking up the data and then sending it out to the cells, for information. Because literally,
sort of like a pregnant lady's cravings. The body knows what it needs for the nutrition that it needs to have for input, and the woman has like a craving.
Yeah,
like, let's say she craves something, and she's actually, her body's trying to tell her that for this time period, could that be it?
No,
Do you
that's
see
not
what
it.
I'm talking about with the connection of it? Do you see where I'm coming from?
The colon. So this is the deal: is that when you eat raw foods or you eat healthy food that has, crystals and metals and different kinds of things in it and microbial mass. So when your body breaks that down, when it goes into your colon extracts all that stuff and then it sends it into the liver basically to be cleaned, and then it sends it into the cells, and the cells pick up that information and data. So your environment, so plants and, have DMT if you eat them right out of the ground. And if you don't cook a lot of the plant material, plus if it has some soil on it, that's even better, because then you have like microbial and bacterial information. And so all of nature tries to figure out how to work with the environment. It comes up with different ideas and thoughts, and it pulls in information in order to, stand up against, bad environmental information. Say, for example, plants that are in areas where there's a lot of chemtrails are actively trying to figure out how to clean up chemtrails. You know what I mean? Not really how to fight against them, because they're taking in all that chemtrail information, and then they're figuring out how to live in spite of, something that's trying to kill. So when you, and so the microbes, they eat and digest heavy metals, they eat and digest radiation, they do a lot of this stuff. They're in this. So if you're not getting this stuff into your system, into the second brain, and the colon is actually digesting this information and then getting it into the cells and everything else, then your body, your biological computer system, doesn't have the information to actually run its systems. It's gaining no information from the environment at all. And usually people are eating stuff that came in from South America. People are eating stuff that has lots of pesticides on it, which damages what they call the RNA. And then in some cases will damage the DNA because, there's no new information coming in. And so the information is replaced with, alien technology to the system and destroying it. So I think what you're trying to talk about is kind of.
And I was going to tell you, don't worry, we're not getting stuff sourced from South America. It's coming up from Mexico, okay?
Right. But still, that's not in your environment.
Actually, it is, because we're not but 30 miles from Mexico.
Right, but it's not in your local, exactly where you live.
No, exactly. And I provided Dr. Lenny with a book to show him that all around us there is food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But there's also this relationship to you growing it and activating and energies in it. So there's, Anastasia. I really love her. She talks about putting the seeds in your own mouth and that everybody in your family should be responsible for the DNA activation of their own seeds and watering those plants and making
I've
sure.
I've never heard of that, dear. Can you explain a little bit about that, please?
Well, basically, you create your own medicine by having a plant, right? It goes back to the native systems of all my relations, right? If you don't have a relationship with it, then it can't help to give you what you need in order to fix you. It has all kinds of codes and information in it, far vast and older than we are. So
that's why they used to just spit the seeds out outside, didn't they? They would eat a piece of fruit and just spit it out, you know what I'm saying, when they'd be sitting outside.
Right, but it can be seeds. It could be like more cultivated. In the Anastasia book, putting the seeds in your mouth before you plant them so that they can actually gain the information because they're technology. So they pull in the information for genetics, your DNA from your field, and then they're charged up. The computer chip is activated. You put it in the ground, you water it. And then there's a lot of talk about how you should not bathe before you go out and water the plants morning and touch them so that they can smell you and they can pick up like your hormones and your actually.
My husband doesn't even want to smell me. I'm just kidding.
Well, but the plants, what they do is they pick up the information and the smells and the whatever else that's coming off your body. And then they specifically design the food that you're going to eat from them as the cure for whatever's wrong with you. So even if you don't know what's wrong with you, the plants can actually create food that will cure just about everything that's wrong. So when eaten kind of raw. So I was kind of working like about 10 years ago with some people, and we were kind of working on this kind of weird project where we were going to try to get like a greenhouse where we could do like a study, say pancreatic cancer, and we could get, maybe sample of, blood, or have people that have pancreatic cancer actually, pee in jars or whatever else, and then put it into the greenhouse along with plants and see if we couldn't genetically produce food that cures pancreatic cancer. But, we would have to do the study on it first, kind of like a collective thing. But individually, that the plants can pick up the codes and they can actually specific food for you. I mean, I look at seeds these days now from doing in the native movement, the seed movement. Some of these seeds are like 5,000. A lot of the native people have been hiding them and keeping them, and now they're starting to kind of bout. And there's a lot of movement towards trying to do outgrows with the native seeds so that we can return them back to the people, and that these little coded computer chips can actually heal soil. They heal water, they can heal us, and they impact everything like around them. Because they're creating whole other fields of energy, by the time that they start coming up. And they can make, from my past experience growing them last summer, they made people in the general vicinity of them go batshit crazy. I mean, literally, I watched people like totally lose it. And so, like all technology, all organic and biological technology, it has to be really carefully used. So, in the event that, I have land, and I'm really hoping next year, I really want to do it this year. I want to be part of the outgrows, because I'm in touch with people who would just send me the seeds, and then we start doing those to get more seeds going of the native varieties. And then we return them back to the hub. But as soon as I have that done, I mean, there are going to be, places on the land where these seeds are grown, and you're going to have done a lot of kind of work in order to actually work those plants directly or go into those areas. Because I don't want the plants harmed, and their programming to be harmed in any way, because they're activating, dark processes in people. And it's kind of interesting because Anastasia, I can't remember, but she gets attacked. Like, they hear about her living in the Siberian forest, and they want to like capture her, and put her into some psychiatric mental hospital probably, and do scientific experiments on her. And so a whole bunch of people come to the Siberian forest, and they're actually literally trying to capture her. And what happens is through their own darkness that's inside of themselves, that's what the energy field shows them. And so everything like really slows down, and they get to see how disgusting and awful and horrible they are. Like all of their like really dark stuff inside of themselves like comes out, and they're like living it in this energy field. And by the time that they're released from it, because they bump up against her energy field, which is old and ancient and clean and pure, and so she didn't have to do anything to them. It happened because they bumped up against that energy field, and that all of their darkness came up, and they had to relive it. Well, they ran for their lives. They were no longer interested in trying to capture her, because what they saw in their own selves was so disgusting that, they like totally ran for their lives. So sometimes, like working with the native seeds, I think that it's like that. They're so pure, and they have these energy fields in them and these codes, that people that haven't done enough work, they start bumping up against it, the field, as they're growing, and it really makes people crazy. And so to protect the plants and their genetics and their coding, to continue them on for another, to help the planet, we have to be really careful about the interaction that takes place near them and in their field. But, I saw things that were magic. I mean, that's the only way that I could explain it, is magical, technology, biological, organic technology in these seeds that I grew last year. And those videos are on my YouTube channel. So, yeah. So people can go there and look at, my, grew these seeds totally out in the desert, because the seeds wanted to work with me. And so people sent them to me. And, I grew them, and what I learned from them, through the process of them. And a lot of it is minor that, I report. But the thing that really blew me away is how they changed the energetic system that they brought in through, however, I don't know, from someplace else. They literally pulled in and delivered. The insects were mind-blowing. They were out in the middle of the desert. I literally would walk towards the garden in the morning, and there was mists of small turquoise and dark blue dragonflies that came from nowhere, literally. And I would walk on the grass towards the garden to take a look at it, to water it or whatever, and literally the mist dragonflies were clearing around my feet. and just the types of insects that they brought in. And I really feel that they brought them from somewhere else. And, this is the other really interesting thing. When I was, how I got involved, make this, and then so we can all kind of get on with whatever we're getting on with. When I was on, so I forgot, and then I'm 50 now. I really wanted to go back to school for farming, but not just farming. I wanted to grow things, and I wanted to be able to grow my own medicinal plants to make my own medicine so that I could help people, because I wanted to have a whole private practice, right? Well, I also was doing nutrition at the time, traditional osteopath, energy and structural. And then I just wanted to add in, plant medicine, right? But I ended up kind of going to permaculture stays and all this other stuff. And because I was, even though I would go and I'd work my butt off at these permaculture stays as a test, they didn't really want me because they wanted really younger people, right? Which was fine. So kind of like bebopped all over the place for several years, applied for tons of different interns and whatever. So finally I ended up getting one like 4 years later. And it's in Mendocino and Neuja Harbor. And I was there, and it was only like a 10% biodynamic farm. And the only reason it was biodynamic was because this crazy forest guy who I hated and considered really dangerous, he had like some major head injuries, but he was doing this compost, and it was totally 100% biodynamic composting. And one day we had this conversation. He lifted this thing up, and we're looking at the compost, and he takes the dirt out, and it's literally like spongy, like marshmallowy. And I start to notice like it has all these like gold flecks and stuff in it. And so he puts it in my hand. As soon as he opened it and starts to move it from the pile into my hand, the chickens went nuts. And he was like, we have to hide this from the chickens because they'll, all these animals here on the farm they go nuts over this soil, this soil that he's turned into. Anyway, what I learned was that it was alchemy. It was alchemy in a way that I could actually alchemy. And so when I went back so that drove me to go back to Steiner College to actually learn how to make soil compost kind of stuff because of the alchemical process that are in it, and to be able to actually and so I think that there are a lot of things that are in plants, in the codes, little computer chips of seeds. Some of the older seeds, really old ones, actually have like barcodes on the side of them. Blows your mind. It just totally blows your mind. And so you can see like the codes that are like barcode that is on them. And so you put the computer chip into the ground, and if the soil is a good hard drive, it has enough data and information, which means it's been restored. And it has enough metals and crystal things and mycelium and stuff like that, where the communication takes place, and the plants have everything they need to pull up into them and join it with the water in them, and then add the sunlight to it. Then there's huge possibilities of what that does to you when you ingest it. I mean, just think about like the electrical processes. I mean, the charges in electricity that go into your body. And obviously most food is not good. Most greens, blues, and the DMT is in green leafy plants is huge. That's the gateway or the doorway to God. I mean, talk about right hemisphere activation. No DMT, no doorway to your God self, right? No doorway to that right brain activity. So I think plants, seeds, old seeds before they've been hybrided and GMO'd, because they started hybriding a lot of the seeds, like in the 20s, during when the industrial complex, really started. They started to degenerate the soil, the food supplies. And I think that they're doing it to keep us more as slaves, because we're not being able to ingest the stuff that we need and the way that we need to ingest it in order for it to activate us, and it's kind of like Rudolf Steiner, Schallenberger's work, I had an incredible interview with friends of mine, Ralph Ring and Marcia Brown, Saturday, and we talked a lot about this, but, in order and we were talking about how Schallenberger talked about things scientifically, that fish are not swimming, they're swammed. They're swimmed, right? They are created in the way that the water propels them, right? It's just kind of a natural process together. Birds are not flying, they're flown, right? Just basically on their relationship to air and their wings and how it works, right? So at the end of the conversation, Ralph Ring said we need, he's working on the process of being lived, which means that, his vessel, his biological suit is not living, but he has to move into the process of allowance of being lived by the world, the natural world that's around him. And so for us to be lived, that means that, we have to return back to eating directly out of nature, right out of the soil. And, those kinds of processes to actually be able to be kind of in a united process where everything in nature, the creation of what the Creator created, lives us, we're lived. We're not living, trying to figure it out, but lived. And anyway, so it's just like their content. And I think if we're eating food, even if it's organic or from other farms, most green leafy vegetables are, including lettuce, have zero nutrition, nothing in them after 3 days after they're picked. So really the only way that we can really be lived and be, completely in a unified system from a biological standpoint is to grow a certain amount of our food and have a relationship with it. That's why I always tell people, like, sprouting is a super powerful thing that you can do, because, you get the seeds, you could even put them in your mouth or whatever, or hey, even, put them in water, soak them, spit in it, pee in it. You know what I mean? Give those seeds, you don't have to put them in total pee or whatever. Just put like a few drops of urine in the water or spit into the jar. And so when they're initially soaking for 24 hours, your information and data is going into them. And then every day you rinse them, as they're growing, and then you're going to eat it. And those seeds can specifically grow something for you, even if you're in an apartment.
How about spitting in your own food as you're making it? Doesn't
No, I don't know, because you have to actually activate DNA.
Yeah, spitting in your own food from working in fast food, I found, is frowned upon. Please don't do that. People don't like it.
Wonderful.
But anyway, so you can get sprouts, and one of the websites that is called Sprout People, and they have every type of sprout that you can get. And I love the longevity blend. It has different kinds of cabbages and stuff in it. And sprouts, 1 cup of sprouts is usually the amount of nutrition that you would eat every day, is equivalent to usually sometimes 2 weeks or 3 weeks of what we eat that you get in one day. And it's going to have, it's going to be moving through all these processes to actually, help heal our bodies and create information that we need in order to go in. And a lot of those nutrition, I would really venture away from alkaline water, distilled water, and sink water. And I would just get some good, purified water to actually do my sprouting in. But anyway, I have to go. So I'm sorry, but I have to go to the bathroom. My doggy's got to go out and go to the bathroom. she's kind of got, I think her teeth are floating.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bridgette. We'll connect later, and as always, just we love you, we love you, we love you. All right.
Yep, and I'll upload
Thank
this.
you.
Send me the files, and I'll upload it on my YouTube channel. If people want to share it or re-listen to it, they'll be able to have it.
Happy
Thank
peeing.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Happy
Bridgette.
peeing.
Good luck. Interesting talk. Smell you later.
Smell you
Bye-bye.
later.
Yeah, smell you later. Bye-bye.
Oh.